Do you remember that sudden, precise moment of rupture of the love that felt like destiny, a dream written before you were born, and wondered, why would the very universe that brought you together suddenly say no to your love? It felt like a sacred alignment, a thread pulling two souls across lifetimes, the timing, the signs, the feeling that someone was remembering you while you were just beginning to know them. You didn't chase it. It arrived, and that's what made it holy. So why did it collapse? Why did the story turn cold? Was it your mistake? Did you love too much, too fast? Were you supposed to hold on tighter or let go sooner? Or was it something else entirely? Something deeper, older, quieter? Carl Jung, the visionary depth psychologist and sacred anatomist of the inner world, once said, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." So when love breaks exactly when it feels divine, when everything lines up and still fails, it may not be a betrayal of destiny. It may be the deeper pattern of the self, summoning your awakening through the very person you thought you were meant to keep. Watch this video until the end. You may find the answers to those questions, and what to do when love, timing, and the soul no longer agree. Don't move, stay in the fracture, because that's where it begins. It felt sacred, like something ancient was being remembered through this connection, something too precise to be coincidence. The alignment of timing, the shocking recognition, the sense that life had orchestrated the moment not just for your becoming, but for the kind of quiet, eternal happiness that only arrives when the soul finally feels seen. Jung called this phenomenon synchronicity. It's a meaningful coincidence between your inner state and an outer event, revealing the hidden architecture of your soul's journey. So when the connection begins to dissolve, when someone who once felt like a mirror suddenly walks away, it feels like a collapse in meaning itself. And the mind demands answers. You look for flaws, yours, theirs, the timing, the choice, the silence. But the universe is not punishing you, it's pointing you inward. Sometimes the no isn't rejection, it's redirection. Jung never said the unconscious was chaos, he said it was structure, an intelligence far deeper than ego. So when a connection ends in the middle of its bloom, when someone who felt like destiny begins to fade, it may not be the result of your imperfection. It may be the result of your evolution. The universe isn't punishing you, it's redirecting you. Now let's explore the hidden resistance that keeps you in this almost love illusion. If this resonates so far, consider subscribing. This is where we dive deeper. You say you've let go, but deep inside, part of you is still waiting for their return. This waiting doesn't always look like longing. Sometimes it looks like hyper-independence, or over-explaining, or spiritual bypassing. It wasn't meant to be, you say, yet secretly hope the universe brings them back. The most dangerous resistance is the kind that wears healing like a mask. Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. And until you bring awareness to your subtle forms of holding on, you will misname your waiting as wisdom." One powerful form of resistance is fantasy attachment. You're not loving them, you're loving the story, the timeline you built around them, the self you became in their presence. And so you keep them alive in your psyche, not because they're still here, but because the version of you that appeared with them felt more whole than the one who remains. There's also the protest of the inner child, the part of you that still believes love must stay to prove it was real. And when it leaves, you make yourself the reason. I wasn't enough. I should have done more. But what if it's not about more? What if it's about less? Less projection, less fantasy, less chasing of ghosts who were only meant to awaken the part of you that stopped dreaming. It's time to shift our perspective. Next, we'll see how this no is not abandonment, but a sacred redirection towards your authentic self. This isn't cruelty, it's precision. The collapse of the relationship is not the collapse of your worth. It's the collapse of the illusion that someone else is your source. Jung spoke of the Anima and Animus, the soul images we unconsciously project onto others. The idealized feminine or masculine within us, mirrored through the people we fall for. But until we reclaim those projections, we confuse the person with the pattern. We fall in love with our own soul, but mistake it for someone else's body. So when they leave, it feels like a death. Because it is. It's the death of projection, The death of the borrowed self, the death of the fantasy that someone else will carry what you haven't yet owned. The universe doesn't just send you lovers, it sends you mirrors. Think about that. And when your inner structure shifts, when your soul begins to require a deeper truth, the outer mirror often shatters, not as punishment, as invitation. Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And sometimes that becoming requires the disintegration of everything you thought would save you. Even synchronicity can collapse. What once felt orchestrated begins to fragment. Why? Because the alignment wasn't a guarantee, it was a glimpse. Or it may be directed toward a deeper mission that I'll explain later. But what happens when the fantasy dies? Let's now explore the crucial inner rite of passage that follows. You wanted it to return, to make sense, to soften. But the longer you wait for closure, the more you become a ghost, because they're not coming back to save you. And they were never meant to. The fantasy must die, the one where they realize, the one where they choose you, the one where you are finally enough to be held, to be chosen, to be kept. It's not real, and the self doesn't negotiate with fantasy. It dissolves it. Jung warned, neurosis is always a substitute for legitimate suffering, and so long as you hover in the limbo of what could have been, you avoid the deeper descent, the grief of what never truly was. You don't need to replay it. You need to bury it. With reverence, not resentment. It was not a mistake. But it was not your destination. And if you keep building your identity around being the one who was hurt, you will never become the one who was transformed. There is a silence waiting for you beneath the ache. Not the silence of defeat, the silence of return. You thought they were your home, but they were your passage. You thought this was your end, but this is your shedding. Carl Jung said, "We cannot change anything until we accept it. Condemnation does not liberate, it oppresses. And so the task is not to forget or to fix or to win them back. It is to finally let go of the version of yourself who needed the story to end any other way. You are not losing the love. You are losing the illusion. And what remains beneath the ashes is truth. What remains beneath the ashes is truth. And next, we'll unveil how the self orchestrated all of this to guide you back to your own soul. And if you're still with me, you're not just watching a video. You're walking through a threshold. Subscribe if you want to keep walking it with us." You felt it, didn't you? Not just love, but orchestration. The texture of something larger arranging each moment with impossible precision. Every look, every encounter, every silence, framed like it was guided. And maybe it was. As we said earlier, Jung called this synchronicity, the mirror between inner and outer worlds. But what no one tells you is what happens after the mirror shatters, when the signs vanish, when the meaning collapses, when you're left with nothing but the ache. That's when the real synchronicity begins. Not between you and them, but between you and you. Because that person, the one who cracked time open, was never the final destination. They were the frequency that matched your hidden fracture. They carried the symbol, but you carried the soul. Carl Jung said, "We meet ourselves time and again in 1,000 disguises on the path of life. And this time, you met yourself in the shape of someone who couldn't stay. They reflected your longing. They awakened your depth. And then, they disappeared, leaving you face to face with the self you had projected outward. So now you must ask, was it the universe that arranged this heartbreak? Or was it the self in disguise, summoning the very collapse that would return you to your axis? This isn't about moving on, it's about moving in. The signs were real, but they were never pointing to them. They were always leading back to you. The one you lost was never just a person. They were a mirror, a riddle, a doorway. And now that you've stepped through the silence they left behind, you may finally hear what's been calling you from the beginning. Not them, you. If this video opened something in you, subscribe for more. Here, we don't chase love, we listen to the soul behind it. See you in the next video. Walk gently, but don't turn back to finish stories.